So, Sam, season 3 of Outlander. Where do we find Jamie at the start of the series?
Yes, at the start of season 3, we pretty much pick up for Jamie and his story where we left him at season 2, where he is going off to battle to die. He believes that this is the last his last option for him. He's sent Claire back through the stones to safety with his unborn child, and he now truly believes that it's the last thing for him to do. That fate has dealt him this hand, and that at least he can go to battle at the Battle of Culloden and die with his men.
Mm-hmm. And we find out at the end of season 2 that he doesn't die. He survives that battle. What happens to him in that time afterwards?
Well, yeah, season 3, we see Jamie in the battle, which is a slight digression from the books, Diana Gabaldon's books. Jamie doesn't remember what happens in the battle, but we thought we owed the viewers that view, and also we were really excited to reenact the Battle of Culloden. It's a very big piece of Scottish history, and yeah, I mean, he wakes up and it really is almost like a new beginning for him. He virtually dies on that battlefield and comes back to life, and then has to rebuild who he is from the very foundations.
Mm-hmm. I found really interesting over the first 2 series was how he grew into the role of being a military leader. Mm-hmm. What was it about him? What is it about Jamie that makes him so adept at that?
That's an interesting question. I mean, he obviously in season 1 and 2 he's very generally pretty good in most situations. He's an intelligent man. He's quite forward-thinking for his time. He's had no real responsibility until he has Claire, and therefore, he's very much a man on the front foot. And I think the marked change in season 3 is that he has grown up a lot more now and has lost the things that he thought that he would never lose. And so now he maybe is a little less carefree and a little more battle weary.
We see Claire in the future, or in 1960s. How do you think Jamie would cope in the future?
Jamie in the future. Well, I'm not sure he would do very well with modern technology. He's probably not got much time for that. Though, having said that, he is interested in, he speaks many languages and he's an educated man, so he'd probably get by, but I think probably the moral code of modern day is very much different to his time period. Mm-hmm.
It's obviously based on a series of books, so have you read them? How far forward are you in the series?
Yes, we use the books, or I certainly use the books, very closely in our preparation. There's a lot of detail in them that you can glean as an actor. You can certainly go back to them whenever we're shooting an important scene, or a scene that is from the books. I like to go back to it and look over that and bring in as much detail as we can. Obviously, it's hard to adapt these books for an episodic TV show, but at least, by looking at the books, you can bring in some of that minor detail.
Mm-hmm. The books get bigger and bigger as they progress. So, I mean, do you realise that when you're making the show that it is getting bigger and bigger as things progress?
Sure, yeah. The show is, obviously, we do a book per season, and now in season 3, there's a time period of 20 years that we have to jump in the space of a couple of episodes. So these are the challenges of the show. It really is very epic. It's a real journey through time and different periods in time. So we're just lucky that we get to challenge ourselves with all those different decades and different time periods.
Mm-hmm. Claire and Jamie spend a lot of time apart in this series, and I think we've kind of got an idea of how she copes with it. But how does Jamie cope with that time apart?
Yes, as I said, Jamie goes to battle and expects to die, and there are things that happen in the battle, but ultimately he does not want to live, and he does not want to live without Claire. So he has to go through a real period of mourning, of grief, of anger, and then finally acceptance, and eventually moves on from her, like anyone would. He has to live his life, and he finds reasons and a purpose in his life. So when eventually they do reconnect, it is again another life-changing moment.
Mm-hmm. We've seen the set where that is meant to happen, and we won't go into any spoilers, but I mean, how did you prep for that big reunion scene? Did you work up a different kind of relationship between the two of you when you would see one another for the first time?
It is a very interesting moment in their history, and I think ultimately it's about the fact that they've now become two completely different people. They've lived their own lives. They've had children. They've had other relationships. So what do you do when someone walks back into your life that you thought was dead, and that you had a great love for and have a great love for? So yeah, it's about that sort of rediscovery of your great love.
Mm-hmm. Some of the locations have a great history, and we were just talking beforehand about some of the places. What was the most surprising thing that you learned about some of the places that you've worked in?
Yeah, we're very lucky on our show that we get to travel all over Scotland, and not only Scotland but the rest of the world. We've shot in other countries, but yeah, just discovering the great diversity of locations in Scotland, the great history we've got, and it's a real honour to be able to bring a lot of our history, the Scottish history, to an international audience.
Mm-hmm. One last question: has the size of the show and the fandom kind of surprised you, and what's been the most amazing thing about that?
I think from day one we were surprised by the lust for the show and the enthusiasm, and we've had great support from our fans. And you know, I think everyone feels that they own these characters because they've grown up with these books, they've read the books, and we just hope to continue to serve, you know, the Diana Gabaldon's great series and interesting characters.